This is life in mainstream Guatemala. It is vintage Central America, syncopated music, bright colors, lush green mountains. Guatemala is said to be the most prosperous country in Central America. But in the Third World, wealth is a relative thing. Half of Guatemala's 9 million people earn less than $200 a year, and 99% of the people earn less than $1,500 a year. Imagine what growing up in Guatemala is like. For a few, childhood can be very good, typical of what we Americans expect childhood to be like. But for the unlucky ones, it can be terrible. These shoeshine boys are orphans who live in the streets and are in stiff competition just to survive. But even they must be considered fortunate when compared to the children who live in a part of Guatemala we might call the Fourth World, if not the underworld. Surely this scene cannot be real, even in the poorest of countries. But it is. A subculture of people who scavenge on a sea of debris, competing with vultures for their food, with acrid smoke rising from an enormous pit and fires smoldering everywhere. It looks like Dante's Inferno, but it is the Guatemala City Dump, depository for every form of garbage and waste known to man, and home to more than 1,000 men, women, and children. For the dwellers of the dump, the cycle of despair continues unbroken. They are born here, they marry here, and ultimately they die here, never knowing of the outside world. Their only hope lies in the hearts of caring people, people such as Kari Engen.
People make their houses out of cardboard or out of plastic bags or whatever, but they're usually pushed away and they have to build again in another place because the government comes in and plows through here.
Kari Engen is a 29-year-old American who has made the children of this dump her personal mission.
I can remember one day looking in the refrigerator and I said, "You have everything," you know. I was like, I have everything. I have food, I have clothes, I have a bed, and I want to show my thanks to God by helping others to have what I've always had.
And what this soft-spoken, almost frail woman has accomplished is extraordinary. She has brought hope to children who had none. It's called Mi Refugio, in English, My Refuge. It's a school. Kari Engen is teaching the children how to read, how to write, how to add and subtract. Kari is giving them the tools they need to work their way out of the dump.
My dreams are to see these children have a future, to be somebody in the world, to be not just dump children, that they can be a doctor, or they can be a lawyer, or they can be a teacher, or they can have a name, they can be somebody.
The routine of life in the Guatemala City dump begins early. Heralded by the roar of arriving garbage trucks and a descending swarm of vultures, a horde of humanity spreads out across the sea of newly delivered debris. The stench is suffocating as it permeates the plumes of smoke from the smoldering fires, further fouling the never-fresh air. Animal carcasses abound. Skulls await vultures' beaks. Rotting vegetables ooze. And through it all, the dwellers of the dump search for food and what other necessities for their existence they can find. Just another day in the only life these people know and will ever know, unless someone can make a difference. But someone is.
My life is here now. I realize that now more than ever, seeing the needs of the kids. And
Kari Engen is a 29-year-old American who came to the dump 5 years ago. She's a self-made missionary, affiliated with no church, but through her faith, she has built a school, creating an oasis for the children from their dump of despair.
It's not just teaching a class, you know, it's more of being able to give to the child completely. The children have such needs emotionally and physically that it's just traumatized them and it's caused them trouble in their studies also. So our main emphasis just not is in the studying or in the eating, but our main emphasis is have them to know the Lord so that the Lord can heal them of their wounds that they've had in their life.
School begins each day at 7:30 a.m. with devotions. The dirt is washed off and the children can be clean for a few hours. Then they get their first real meal of the day with fresh, wholesome food. The children start between ages 8 and 10. None can read. Most don't even know how to hold a pencil. The strategy is to make everything colorful to escape the bleak depression of life for children in the dump. Miraculously, Kari's built the school with prayer.
Well, when we first started, I didn't have anything. I didn't have even money. All I had was a vision that God had given me. I had the desire in my heart to do it. I didn't even have a building. And we started in a smaller building than this. And we started out with 52 children, then we had 68, then 75. This year we had 120 children, our 4th year, and hopefully next year 185.
Success for children of the dump is measured by the progress they make, not a certain grade. For kids with no concept of education or school, learning still comes quickly. In only a year, colors have been learned. Some are writing, and some beginning to read.
My dreams are to see these children have a future, to be somebody in the world.
The name of Kari's school is Mi Refugio. It means my refuge. But for these children, literally and spiritually, this sanctuary is more than a refuge. It's their only hope for rescue. It could be a surreal scene in a Mad Max movie, a world turned upside down with people left to live on garbage. But for 1,000 people in Guatemala, it's their real-life story. And for this American woman, it's her reason for living.
I just believe God has sent me here to work with these children and to help them to have a better future and a hope.
Kari Engen isn't a nun or a missionary from any church, but she is a woman of God. And while she doesn't represent a religious organization, she is compelled by her faith to help the children of the dump.
I feel like my needs are met through the children. I just feel a joy and my life is in them. When I can see them smiling and I can see them happy and having their needs met, I'm happy too.
If meeting their needs makes Kari happy, then there is lots of potential happiness here. Day in and day out, the men and women scavenge the dump for their food and material for shelter. With no skills, illiteracy, and absolute poverty, this too becomes their children's legacy. Kari's school is their only hope for a way out. And Kari's hope is prayer.
We pray for everything. I mean, anything that we need, pencils, crayons, notebooks, a new car, a new building. We prayed for this building where we are right now. And it was a whole year that we prayed, and through that time, God provided us a new building. And right now we're praying for a new piece of land, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we know in time it is going to come.
Kari's a phenomenal young woman. She's come to a very small corner of the world and made a tremendous difference.
I've never really met anyone quite like her. She's a bit like a saint.
Fort Myers surgeon John
so
Kagan
much
and
about
medical
these
specialist
poor
Steve
children
Fries
here in
frequently
Buffalo.
travel from Florida to the dump to help Kari minister to the medical needs of the children.
She's very spiritual, deeply religious, and I think that really is her guiding force in her crusade to help these kids.
She just cares so much about these poor children. She gives her life for them. I can't imagine myself giving my entire life for a cause like this, and yet it's such a noble thing to do, and she does it.
And as for the future, Kari doesn't worry about it. She prays for it. And to the amazement of many and the happiness of the children, her prayers continue to be answered.
I think it's something that God puts in your heart, and He puts in a desire to really lay down your life for the rest of the people. And it really makes me happy that I can make God happy and that I can make these children happy.
I mean, I'm telling you, he doesn't have a pulse.
Fort Myers orthopedic surgeon Dr. John Kagan at work in the Guatemala City dump.
How long has he been sick?
A volunteer, Dr. Kagan is a Floridian who makes occasional visits to the dump. This morning, he is rescuing a young man from certain death.
He doesn't have a palpable radial pulse. He's got a faint femoral pulse, so his pressure's 60 or less. He's sick. He needs to be.
They called the ambulance.
An ambulance had been called, but Guatemalan doctors don't respond to the dump.
We gotta take this guy to the hospital.
Rushing out of the shanty, photojournalist John Bafar alerts the rest of our crew.
He's very sick. He needs to go to the hospital now, so we need some help getting him out of here. We need to clear the van out.
And shortly, cradling the young man in his arms, Dr. Kagan rushes him to the hospital himself.
The timing is so important. I'll tell you, when we found him and he had no pulses and he was pretty much unresponsive, I would say that his time on Earth was fairly limited at that point.
Ultimately, the diagnosis would be cholera, news which sent fear throughout the dump. Highly contagious, cholera unchecked would ravage these people who already live under the most unhealthy conditions.
I couldn't believe that people actually lived like this. They lived in such squalid conditions. It's so dirty and terrible here. And then to see the young children and the families actually make small houses and lean-tos, no running water, no facilities. It's pretty unbelievable.
Dr. Kagan and his partner, Fort Myers prosthetic specialist Steve Fries, had returned to the dump on this day to check on one of their patients, an 8-year-old boy to whom they had fitted an artificial forearm and hand.
I was presented with an opportunity to help someone who has a very real and apparent need. A little boy named Raphael who was born without his hand or arm, and we thought it might be advantageous if he were fitted with a prosthesis.
Steve had fitted Raphael several weeks ago for the prosthesis. Today he was meeting Raphael for the first time since to see how he was doing.
He seems to be doing very, very well. He's adapted to using it on a daily basis. It shows some obvious signs of wear, which is an excellent indicator. He's doing very, very well. I'm quite pleased.
The arm has made a significant mental difference for Raphael as well. American missionary Kari Angan says it's changing his life.
What he used to do was go on the street and say, well, I don't have an arm, give me money. I really have seen a change in the school because he's become more friendly, he's more open, he relates more to the other kids, he doesn't shy away as he used to do. He's even talked more.
The doctors can partially restore Raphael's missing limb, but as significant as it is, the rest of Raphael's needs and those of the other children of the dump continue to be lost in the mire of third world poverty. But for this little boy, the Americans did bring hope and a chance for his life to be better.
Maybe Jesus loves me?
Oh, sure.
Jesús te ama? ¿Sí? ¿Por qué no quieres hacer caso?
A children's Bible song to break the ice with a shy little boy from the dump. His mother suggested the tune, no doubt learned from American missionary Kari Engen. Kari is dedicating her life to help these children, and it's easy to understand why. Of all the tragic sights in the dump, the faces of the children move you the most. Their needs are masked by grime and childish smiles, and it hurts to know their innocence isn't protected very long here. Kari tells us the young boy's mother would send her son away if she could.
She's saying that he's a little rebellious in this kind of environment because he goes off with the wrong crowd, and that she really would like to see him be in a home where he could be raised in a better way.
The same concerns as any parent, anywhere. News director John Butte accompanied me on this assignment to the dump. For him, it was quite an experience, too.
Bob, the compelling thing about these children is how warm and giving they are. This little girl has so little, and I was standing here looking out across the dump, and I felt someone brush against my side, and I looked down, and she just appeared. I squatted down to look at some broken fingernail polish on her hands. Before I do it, she was sitting in my lap. It's easy to understand why some people want to give them so much, because they have virtually nothing at all.
Even John's Channel 8 hat became a valued item. It moved from head to head, the children uniquely ready to share with their friends their small treasure. But if there's treasure here, it has to be Kari Engen. The school she's built is the children's only hope. Here, they escape the filth and smoke and garbage of their lives in the dump. Florida medical volunteers to the dump, Dr. John Kagan and Steve Fries, describe Kari as a modern-day Mother Teresa.
She's very spiritual, deeply religious, and I think that really is her guiding force in her crusade to help these kids.
I know that when Kari Engen prays for something and it happens, that it must come from God.
Hearing of the Mother Teresa comparison, Kari responds characteristically humbly.
It makes me laugh, but it also makes me have a joy to think that people can see the work that's going on and really see God working in these children, and that I'm here to help them.
Kari says her dream is to see the children have a future. As she says, to be a doctor, a teacher, to be somebody, to have a name.
My life is in them. When I can see them smiling and I can see them happy and having their needs met, I'm happy too.